Welcome to the Outsourcing Blueprint, where scaling your business gets smarter, not harder. Hosted by Scott Smith, an outsourcing expert with over 20 years of global experience. From India to Alaska to South Africa, Scott's passion for people drives his mission to help you build powerhouse teams created for success. Grab your coffee, your boldest dreams, and your blueprint. It's time to build the business you've always wanted. Let's go.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith, and I am so excited to have our guest today, Darrin Guttman. Darrin is the founder of the Scale Summit, which is a fantastic program for entrepreneurs and business owners. And Darrin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Scott. Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. I really am excited to have you, to talk to you and to have you here on the show with us today because, you know, I as a client of yours, as somebody who has participated in the Scale Summit, I was excited to be able to talk to you because I had such a magnificent experience, and I think that everybody needs to have.
Excellent. I like that thinking, actually. I like that message. I think our conversation's over.
And we're done. No, so talk a little bit, if you would, just about how you got started. Give a little bit of your background, talk about, you know, your career path, and then if you wouldn't mind, it's such an incredible resource. I would love to hear what inspired you to create the Scale Summit and what you were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, lived in the Bay Area, and the dot-com bust followed by 9/11 killed my industry. I was selling graphic design services to marketing departments. And at that point, decided in 2002 to start my what ended up being now a 22-year consulting business for small business owners. And so launched our parent company back in 2002, focused on businesses 5 to 50 million in revenue, primarily in the B2B service space, and helped them build a client acquisition plan to get to their next level, whatever that may have been. CEO going from 5 million to 10 million, or one going from 10 to 20, that kind of thing. About a decade ago, I realized that there was a blue ocean. And at that time, I didn't use the term because I didn't know what blue ocean was, to be honest with you. But once I learned it, I realized, oh, that is what we were looking at. But I realized that there was a need for startup and early stage business owners to put their hands around higher level selling strategy. But the problem was they couldn't afford it. Our price tag was around $5,000 a month retainer. No small business was going to do that. And so I started to look at ways to meet that market. And at the time, I was in a CEO group. So there's a lot of CEO groups out there. Vistage is one of the biggest ones, not the one I was in. But I love the CEO group concept. So I thought, man, if I could get a bunch of people in a room, everybody could pay less and they can all pay something they can afford. We can make our money and then we can give them this high level selling strategy. So that was the beginning of the origin of the Scale Summit. It just took us 10 years and a pandemic, which was very important to figure it all out. How to actually deliver it took a long time.
You know, that's really interesting. And it's funny that not funny, that you mentioned the pandemic. Nothing funny about the pandemic on any level, but it has had a really remarkable impact on a lot of industries and on a lot of businesses. In my previous corporate employment, we had, you know, probably our best year in history in 2020. Which was really interesting. That it surprised a lot of us, but we had so much revenue that was generated. How did the pandemic kind of shape the direction that you took?
Virtual was the first thing. Virtual meetings, because we had tried live meetings, and the truth was it didn't bring the price down enough. It just kept the price a little too high. We tried like a WebEx type thing. What was it called? Like GoToMeeting. And big businesses were using it before the pandemic. Small were not. We tried Skype, because we figured everybody knew Skype, great for personal, not for business at the time, at least at our market. So I just couldn't figure out a way to get people to congregate in a cost-effective way until Zoom became the way we did business. And once we did that, we were off to the races. And the other thing, the second part of that, is our overseas resources now. Without that and Zoom, these two things couldn't happen.
Yeah, Zoom has been a game changer for a lot of people. And, you make a good point, the being virtual. I remember when we came home in March of 2020, and I only ever went back to the office once, and that was to pick up stuff, to bring it home because, we didn't know that we were going to be home long term. And so when that happened, we ended up selling the property. And so a lot of businesses actually went that direction and went virtual. And so they were able to, reduce their real estate footprint, reduce the cost associated with that. And, any brick and mortar business is going to have significant overhead. So going virtual was super helpful. So interesting that it affected you in that way and broadened your opportunities. And then I don't want to just overlook or overshoot. You talked about offshore resources. I mean, this is the Outsourcing Blueprint.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about offshore resources and how that has helped you to kind of maximize your offering and your support for your customers.
Yeah, I would just take the word kinda out because without it, we couldn't do it. I mean, it's 100% the solution. I have a team of people that I will probably never meet face to face. I've become very close with over the last year plus, but they're in India and Pakistan and another in Pakistan and the Philippines. And these are very, very high quality people. One of them has been with me, Malkesh, you know the name because you hear it all the time, right? He's been with me for over a year now. Timur, who handles our LinkedIn outreach, has been with us for 6 or 8 months plus and is now running a small team. It's unbelievable the quality that you can get for the price tag, to be perfectly honest with you. And I believe it's a win-win. Their year-end bonuses were a big thing to them and, pennies on the dollar from what I'm used to doing in year-end bonuses.
Yeah, and that is, so not only is it gratifying for you, but it makes a big difference. One of the things that I talk about when I talk about building and managing teams offshore, especially, you want them to understand your buy-in and that you are deeply invested in their success and in them as individuals. And when you create that individual connection, you develop an opportunity to really grow not only longevity and loyalty, but to create opportunities for them to even bring other people in that will help to maximize your offering because they're happy. You're paying them, you're investing in them further. That's going to encourage them to continue to buy into you and what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm seeing it, I'm feeling it. And yeah, they're all starting, we are starting to build teams around each of these key people. It's phenomenal. It's actually unbelievable that that's where we are in business today. So
I love that. So I love to hear that. As you know, I'm an India specialist, but I love to hear that you're able to tap into the global talent pool and the community around there, in large part because, and people don't talk about this very much, but it's impactful. Anywhere we create jobs has an impact. And, for in certain communities, in certain countries, the opportunities that we get to create through outsourcing, they're life-changing and they're powerful opportunities. So I applaud you for tapping into that resource.
Yeah, I truly enjoy it. It was out of necessity, but boy, we've got some really good people. And so it's just great. Yeah, I'd like to give more business to the United States, but we do that too.
Well, of course, absolutely. That's kind of, where it all circles back to. And that's something that people don't really fully understand is when you're able to build and grow your business, even by, reducing costs, by moving some things to a lower cost center, you create opportunities here that you didn't have if you were unable to do that. And when you can scale and grow here domestically by properly utilizing a global talent pool, you kind of open endless opportunities for where your business can grow to. And people don't approach it from that direction. It can be controversial, but from my experience, I've seen that time and time and time again. And people really drive success in their business when they recognize that they can be open to that global talent pool and the difference that they'll make for their organization.
Couldn't agree more.
So let's talk a little bit and I want to segue real fast. Before I do that, Malkesh, if you're hearing this, you're a rock star, baby.
He is.
He is. So, all right. So one of the things that you first introduced me to when I came into the Scale Summit was the systemized selling playbook. That's something that is kind of at the core of what you try to build. And you ask people to do the work in it And you then do work along with them to help you walked us all through it, helped us to get, familiar and help us create things like our differentiation statement. Talk a little bit about, why it's so effective especially when you're working with small businesses, and how does that make itself different or stand out from other strategies?
Yeah. So the systemized selling playbook started with our parent company. It was the basic formula that we use to help successful small businesses move to their next level. And it was all about systemizing the way you sell and making sure everybody in the company understands everything from your selling message to your selling process, strategy, and the like. And so it would help a business go from 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, wherever they were looking to go. What we did is we took that formula and we use it now nearly exactly the same with a couple little tweaks. But now the focus for early stage and the startup and early stage entrepreneur and business owner is to build their first client acquisition plan. Because what we know from working, we had almost, I just posted this on LinkedIn today, almost 1,100 people come through our community in 2024. And I will tell you, a plan is something they need, whether they realize it or not. They think they need to generate leads. They think they need to learn how to close sales, but what they need is a plan. And so that's what you got, starting with how do you differentiate yourself? You brought it up, the differentiation statement. That is the backbone to the whole thing. Because if I ask somebody, what is your challenge in acquiring business? They will tell me lead generation, but they have no idea that not knowing how to differentiate is your first problem. Not your only, but your first. So that's the origin of the playbook.
Yeah, you know what? So the differentiation statement, that whole process that you took us through to help figure that out, and really, because it's about what makes you different, what makes you stand out. You hear a lot, from different, sales gurus. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody, is interested or cares about what you're doing. You need to bring them something that's going to make you stand out to them and give them something to be interested in, so that you have something. I'm not saying this very well, Darrin, but having an offer and having the ability to close a deal, clearly that's all important, but without something that sets you apart and that makes you interesting to others, you're not going to get the opportunity to present anybody your offer. You're not going to get the opportunity to close anything. So I think that the focus that you put on there and building it around the differentiation statement, clearly that has stuck, right? Right there. It's stuck right there. And every time I approach a client, I always, at the forefront of my mind, am thinking, am I really standing out to them? And, and I have to give you credit for that, because it's ever present. I'm always aware of that differentiator.
Today's episode of the Outsourcing Blueprint is brought to you by Leadcast Studio. Are you ready to turn your podcast into a lead generation powerhouse? Check us out today on the web at leadcast.studio. Leadcast Studio, turning conversations into clients.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that after going through the program, because it is that important. And I think what people don't get is the hardest thing to do in client acquisition today, which might be the hardest thing to do in small business today, is to just get an initial message across where somebody on the other end sees that message or hears it and simply says, what's this? That's the hardest thing to do. Think about how many emails you delete. How many of them look like lies? How many of them come at you from a space that doesn't feel comfortable to you? How many LinkedIn posts? Is telemarketing still a thing? I don't even know. That's where I started my career. If you're getting phone calls, all of them are saying the same thing. It's all the same formula. Look at their website, pull one sentence out, and then compliment them on that. Then tell them everything you do. Then ask them to engage. It doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work.
No, and I don't mean to step on you there. No, you're right. And how many emails have I deleted just today? How many phone calls have I just let, not answer because it looks like it's spam? It's a problem. And now that more people are diving into LinkedIn, which I love, people need to dive into LinkedIn.
And right there with you.
Yeah, but something has to set you apart. So And I will address this as far as how you handle it. When I was first approached, because I was first approached by somebody on LinkedIn through a direct LinkedIn outreach, hey, we have this thing, you might find it interesting, and I don't remember exactly how it was phrased, just off the top of my head, but I found it interesting. Mm-hmm. As an entrepreneur, I was looking for an edge. I was looking for something that was going to create interest in what I was doing. And by offering me something that was going to give me the edge, or so I hoped, or going to allow me to create interest in my offer as a consultant, it pulled me right in. And I came to an event, and I showed up at an event. I think it was probably a networking event. I showed up at networking or a round table. I don't remember which was the first thing that I
It was a round table. Yeah, it was a round table.
See, because you've got it memorized. But I showed up and I was like, oh, this is interesting, But so the outreach worked, but here was the differentiator that I caught in you, okay? When I met with you, you were not the first person that I had met with when I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to get into this program or that program. But you hit me right in the heart of my concern. Everything is expensive. And as a bootstrapped entrepreneur, I had very limited resources. And it was important to me that I invest my time as wisely as I invest my money. And your program hits people exactly in that spot. And it creates an opportunity for people who may not realize they have that opportunity to learn how to build and differentiate and scale and grow their offer, create their lead magnet, get themselves out there and stand out in front of people. And people don't necessarily know. 1,100 people found out in 2024, right? But people don't necessarily know that there is an option for bootstrapped entrepreneurs to be able to jump in and get real experience, real training, a real community. And you offer that in a way that I hadn't come across. And it drew me in.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. And, that's a big point that I want to make sure we understand. We don't sell our playbook. It's not worth anything by itself. The reason for that is most of the people, and this is what we recognize going in, most of the people who are serving the early stage startup community are giving you a do-it-yourself project, because that's all they can afford. So I don't put anybody down for that. You just can't afford to give guidance. It took us a long time to figure out that do-it-yourself doesn't work. If it did, you would do it yourself. But you're an expert in building teams and offshore. Somebody else is an expert in HR or recruiting or IT, not sales, not marketing. And so in order to run a business, you have to be an expert in that. That's what you sign up for, whether you realize it or not. And so our program is about the playbook, yes, but it's about the guidance of our sales strategist that walks you through it, that helps you connect the dots. And so it has the differentiator. I also want to mention it has a complete lead generation framework from messaging and so forth.
Yeah, it's the framework, it's the guidance, it's the differentiator, it's the whole thing. It's why it's a playbook, and it encompasses everything from where you really need to get started and start to reframe and think about what you're trying to build, to being able to be ready to go to market and to actively go to market while you're still involved in working with the program, getting live feedback from real people, from peers, and from fantastic coaching. And you said something just now that cued a funny conversation that I had with somebody the other day, which was they were talking about they're a coach, right? And they were talking about wanting to do something themselves, and I was suggesting to them that they might want to hire somebody to help them to figure out whatever it was they were trying to figure out. And I don't want to be too specific, because then they'll know I'm talking about them. Because I know they're going to hear this, along with the other 17,000 people that hear it. But I looked at them and I said, let me just stop you right there and ask you a question. Now, when you offer yourself as a coach, do you think that people think that they can just do it on their own? And they said, well, no, they can't. And I said, okay, so you recognize that people can't just come in and do what they think they can do just completely on their own. And then I actually referenced, one of my favorite automotive repair tools, which is YouTube, right? Because if I need to fix something, nothing major, because I'm not that skilled,
right.
But if I need to fix something, the first place I go is YouTube, or like, one of the AI tools like ChatGPT to get some counsel or advice as to what I need to do next. And I said, so you recognize that you're saying you can do it on your own, but you're a coach. And, and they stopped and they were like, that's a really good point. So we get in our own way. And to segue this back to the conversation, we get in our own way, especially as entrepreneurs. And we don't do it on purpose, but because we think that we can do it ourselves. And not to be too, Finding Nemo-ish, but, you can't do these things, Nemo. You just can't, right? And we need help. We need guidance. We need help. And that's really where you and your team and the Scale Summit really comes in and kind of saves the day.
What we try to do. I'm glad you see it that way.
I do. I mean, the community that you've built and the things that you have established there have been spectacular. So I don't want to take up too much of your day, Darrin, and I've really enjoyed the conversation so far. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Do you have any suggestions or advice for entrepreneurs, people that, maybe they're just getting started, they feel stuck, everybody's in kind of a trial and error, throw things at the wall and see what sticks, What advice do you have that you would give people to kind of shift their mindset?
Boy, we could talk all day right there. I said this, I always say this, I should say that there are three things as a business owner that you have to have. You have to have a strong ability to do what you do, IT or whatever it might be. You have to have the ability to get your finances done and the ability to sell. Those are the three things. When you start a business, what I find is everybody understands you have to have the expertise in your chosen field. Everybody gets that, and they're all great at that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone out and done this themselves. And they understand the money component as well. The sales component, I find to be a little bit of a mixed bag. And some understand early on, and some think they can just figure it out, or it'll just come to them. And so what I focus on is that sales part, because without that, you have no money to count and nobody to do your business for and on. And so that starts with your plan. If you don't know how to sell and you don't have a plan, you might be on the wrong side of that statistic that says about half the business go out of business in 5 years. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get early stage business owners to understand, have tremendous confidence in yourself. And then second, I want every single one of them to have a plan. And if they don't have one, to come to me to build one. Because that confidence level, I think everyone should come to the Scale Summit to start. Everyone, if you are not a sales and marketing expert. Everyone. If you don't, I just don't get why you wouldn't. Because we have a complete community. We have free resources. We do 2 workshops every month just for free, just to bring you into the community and to get you meet people. You network, you generate business there, and you build your plan. And so, boy, that was a really big commercial. That's really my message. It's like, get a plan, get a plan. It's so important.
It is. It's so important. Darrin, you're absolutely right. So get a plan. And if you need a plan, the Scale Summit is absolutely a place to come. I highly recommend Darrin and his team at the Scale Summit. So Darrin, where can people find more information about you and about the Scale Summit?
So you talked about LinkedIn early. We can do a whole nother conversation on that. Find me on LinkedIn. That's definitely one place. And if we can drop in the notes, however we do that, I'll put my LinkedIn there. thescalesummit.com is our website. You can find us there as well, of course, and see what we have going on in the community. But yeah, let's interact. And what we do is we invite you to a roundtable, and that's where you and I met. And the roundtable is a fun and interactive discussion. It is not a webinar. Every week we do it at Friday, noon Pacific and 3 o'clock Eastern. It's a 1-hour open conversation with a different subject every single Friday. We sell out every Friday because we keep it to 30 people or as close as we can to have a decent conversation. But what it's there for is to give you a very low-key look into our community, the people who are there, and the strategies we cover. Come to one of our roundtables, and then you'll kind of figure out your next steps from there.
Darrin, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, love it.
Thank you. Everybody, this has been another episode of the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. If today's episode brought you value, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to take their business to the next level. Follow me on LinkedIn or on YouTube at Akata Consulting for more tips, insights, and updates. Or join our free school community, the Outsourcing Blueprint. Until next time, keep dreaming bold, building big, and outsourcing smarter. Let's go. Today's episode of the Outsourcing Blueprint is brought to you by Leadcast Studio. Are you ready to turn your podcast into a lead generation powerhouse? Check us out today on the web at leadcast.studio. Leadcast Studio, turning conversations into clients.